Welcome back. In this episode, I sit down with Andy Springer, Chief Client Officer at Rain Group, to talk about what it really takes to excel in strategic account management. Rain Group's latest research shows a massive growth opportunity for top performing account managers, those who are driving up to 3 times more revenue, profit, and client satisfaction than their peers. But how do they do it? In this episode, Andy shares exactly that, including why focusing on fewer, carefully selected accounts yields outsized returns, the vital role of proactive account segmentation to ensure lasting profitability, and Rain Group's game-changing strategies that can transform you from just another vendor into a trusted advisor who's consistently delivering results. Join me as Andy breaks down how to become a high-impact account manager and drive ridiculous upside within your accounts. Hey, Andy, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on Account Management Secrets.
Thank you very much for having me, Alex. I'm looking forward to our time together.
So you are the Chief Client Officer at Rain Group. Rain Group does a lot of training and research in sales, and particularly in an area that's near and dear to my heart, which is strategic account management. And I really want to get into that today with you, talk about what it means to be a great strategic account manager, and learn a little bit more about the lay of the land in 2024 and beyond. And I wanted to start out just by asking a question about kind of what is the purpose of this role? And you guys at Rain Group capture this so well. You talk about the ridiculous upside in most existing client bases for companies, meaning that so many people overlook the mountain of gold that they're sitting on with their existing clients. But tell us more about that framing and what it is that most companies are overlooking when it comes to their existing customers.
Yes, I think if you look at our research, and we do research studies, and then we update our research studies, and we always aim to have our finger on the pulse in terms of what's going on in the various spaces that we operate. For strategic account management, I guess we continue to see the multiplied result that top performing strategic account managers get versus what we define as the rest. And so the way in which we define top performance in strategic account management is that a top performing strategic account manager will increase the annual revenue in their strategic accounts. They will increase the annual profit across those select strategic accounts. They're not just doing that and selling more. Client satisfaction is either being maintained at a high level or increasing year on year. And in terms of their overall strategic account management success, it would be defined by the way in which we analyse them as either excellent or very good. The rest in that research pool globally would have either not achieved one or most of those outcomes. When it comes to the results that top performers achieve versus the rest, in terms of growing revenue by 20% or more year on year, they do that 3.1 times more than the rest. In terms of growing profit by 20% or more across those strategic accounts, 3.4 times more than the rest. And in terms of that client satisfaction metric, year on year, 4.5 times improvement in client satisfaction year on year. So they're making their clients happier. They're making their organizations healthier in terms of profit, and also making sure that revenue from those accounts are growing.
And this is a really big deal, especially the profitability part, right? So at the beginning, a customer is by their very nature unprofitable because it takes some time and effort to acquire the customer, do all the marketing, do all the selling, all the stuff that goes into acquiring the customer. So right off the bat, customer is unprofitable for a certain period of time, right? Like the payback period there. So the longer a customer can stick around with us, the more profitable that they'll get over time. But you're making an even more of a distinction here, which is that the top performers, the people who do this best, they're actually able to get 3.4 times more profit over time than people who are just kind of average account managers.
That's correct. And I'm happy to and I'm sure there's a lot of strategic account managers listening to this who will be like, okay, kind of they're asking the question that everyone asks, and that is, well, how do I do that? And so, there's a very simple answer to that, and you can find that in the research. But there's hacks, right? And over time, my team globally are practitioners, is what I like to call them. We go into organizations and we don't just rely upon research. We go in and we live strategic account management. And typically what we do a lot of in mid-market and enterprise is sales transformations. That's kind of the best way to describe what we do. Our clients, we find them at a starting point. They have a very clear end game in terms of what they want to realize. We call that the new reality or future state that they want to get to. And our job is helping them engineer from where they are in strategic account management right now in terms of their results to that end game in terms of what defines success or client results, as we call it. Now, I'll give you one hack straight off the bat. And I was just talking to one of our senior consultants on an engagement about this just yesterday morning. And I said, look, the biggest challenge in any transformation and any activities that we're involved in is time, right? And what we find also separates those who outperform versus those who don't in strategic account management is one very simple thing. It's the accounts that they select to grow. And that is it's not screened out in the research. It's there. And as a practitioner, when you're in and when you've, engineered the success in terms of shifting that dial to take someone from the rest to top performance, you go for less, you win more. And so I think that's not as clearly spelled out in what I've just said in terms of that research highlight as what we find day in, day out.
Right. So that's about segmenting your accounts, so understanding the characteristics of different accounts and what might help them to grow or become more profitable, and then qualifying them to make sure they're over certain thresholds or at certain points. And to your point, what you're saying is the fewer I go after, so the smaller my portfolio or the more focused I am, the bigger the impact I'm going to have.
That's correct. Like we all have the same amount of time, right? And we delineate. It's a very simple delineation in terms of our account selection criteria that we bring to the table, and that is, first of all, we need to delineate. Actually, I think there's three. Let me call it three. Right? There's strategic accounts. So, if you were listening to this and you were going, Andy, I don't have your account selection tool. What would define a strategic account? The first thing I would say when I'm asked that question is, okay, is that account strategically important to your firm, to your organization? And that can be a yes for a variety of different reasons. We've been with them for a very long time. They're a logo that are critically important for us to showcase that we have an ongoing relationship with. They are a trophy logo that if you hold them in our industry, you're defined as the best, right? They have they're an account which is going to have a 10x growth cycle in the forward few years, whatever it may be. And then the next question is, when we've defined that, we've got that list, and often that list is too big. Which of those accounts, if we applied a significant amount of proactive effort to and time of a team of people, would we realize outsized returns, right? Outsized returns, right? So it might cost us 100 and we're going to get 500 back in the forward year or 2 years. And then you start to wheedle the list down pretty quick. Why? There are strategic accounts that will organically grow without proactive effort. And that's a really important point, because everyone will look at strategic accounts, Alex, and go, every account's strategic and it's like, that's great, but you don't have the time to grow them, right? In terms of the way in which top performers do versus the rest. So I think it's a big mistake up front by trying to go for all, because you end up winning less.
Yeah. And, I hear this all the time too. Every account is strategic. All my accounts are special, et cetera. That's not the case, because we got to focus our efforts. We got to focus our talents. And so we go through the selection criteria. What are your recommendations there? How do we do this? What's a typical size of portfolio that we should be aiming for? I mean, the reason I'm asking is when I talk to folks, especially around customer segmentation, everyone has this like very basic view of customer segmentation is simply based on revenue, right? Well, hey, it's a big customer, small customer, medium customer, whatever. No, that's vastly insufficient to the needs of most companies. We need to be looking at fine, what's their current revenue, but also what's the potential? How committed are they? Is this a good fit customer? Is this in the right geography for us or the right industry for us? We need to go through all that stuff to really start to narrow the list. In your experience, what are the things that most people are overlooking when it comes to segmenting or selecting their accounts?
They don't know them well enough. I mean, you know, we just did a recent deployment with a very large global building products firm, and they are an amazing company, and they're just their willingness to want to solve for this, and their dedication was amazing. One of the best teams sales enablement teams we've ever worked with. It was just mind blowing, their commitment to get this right. And when we did a strategic account management and key account management, and key accounts is a one to many versus strategic accounts, which is many to one, right? And what does that mean? Many people inside the organization working on one strategically important account, and we'll talk about that a bit later in terms of the roles that different people play in a very strategic way on a strategic account team versus an account manager, account director, account lead, owning many key accounts, right? So that's the delineation. And when we segmented the strategic accounts, it was very much around, we didn't know the accounts well enough to be able to make calls in terms of growth, and so we had to undertake a pause in our SAM transformation. And we had to go into a discovery phase where we identified and we scoped out, and then we executed a discovery phase to go and ask and discover a range of different questions. And for some of them, it was an hour-long session with key executives with inside the strategic account, going in and getting under the hood in terms of what does that future look like, and talk us through what that future looks like, and talk us through the role we could play in partnering with you to help you get there, right? And then it was abundantly clear post that discovery phase who was in and who was out, and it just went into a proactive reactive list around, these are the target strategic accounts that if we apply a proactive effort to, we're going to get an outsized return. These are going to grow. These strategic accounts are going to grow organically. They're very happy with how we're looking after them. If we applied more effort, we would get no greater return, right? And so knowing your customer, getting under the hood, looking at their strategic direction for 12, 24 months. And by the way, we did not have one of nearly 100 strategic account candidates in that wouldn't sit down and talk about their future plans and ways in which this company could potentially partner with them to realize.
So that's a great sign on its own, right? Simply the willingness of them to engage is a really big deal.
And it's never the client or customer's issue. It's always the account manager or the selling org that is the issue. And often that comes down to time and also knowing what to do and when to do it.
Yeah. I talked to so many account managers about this, and the answer to the question so often is exactly what you said. We don't know our customers well enough. And account managers will often resist, right? They'll be like, oh gosh, I don't want to have to go do another discovery session. I don't want to have to go do more research, read more reports, or what have you. But it's really the type of activity that can generate tremendous insights and give you extra leverage within the account. So every time you do it, in my opinion at least, every time you do that amount of work, have another discovery call, have another voice of customer interview, do spend more time with the client, it will generate insights. You'll be able to see risks. You'll be able to see opportunities that you weren't aware of. Sometimes like with game-changing type of magnitude, like 10x or 100x magnitude if you're doing the work right. But so many people like resist it. They're like, oh, this just sounds like work for work's sake. And I'm always sitting there saying, no, this is super, super valuable activity. What you're talking about is in a really narrow scope, meaning it's for a single account. In your definition, right, strategic account is many to one. So it's not even that I have a portfolio of 5 accounts. It's I've got a team of 5 people working on one single account. And those are typically going to be 10, 100 plus $1 million accounts. And so there's a lot of leverage within there.
That's correct. And I think that's when it, once we've selected the accounts, we then select the strategic account team, right? And people, that's where I start getting people go, a team? What do you mean a team? It's like, yeah. So top performers have very clearly defined, and we codified the roles that they play. And we call them, there's 6 roles. We call them the strategic account management roles. And we, it's as simple as saying, the best way to describe it would be there's 3 core roles, and there's 3 optional roles, right? So there's 6 in total, right? Those core roles are the relationship lead. Now, that role is often played by the account manager, the strategic account management, the strategic account lead, the director of strategic account, whoever owns the relationship with inside that strategic account. The challenge is some strategic accounts are so big, there might be multiple people that play that relationship lead role, and that's okay. You might have a few people or you might have one. It doesn't matter. There was no delineation between those who had multiples versus single relationship leads in terms of success. They just needed to work together. But I'll show you that. I'll tell you how that connects in a sec. The next one was the results driver, right? Now, the results driver is another critical core role. Why? Their eyes are on that growth goal, right? So they're not interested in the day-to-day, the week-by-week, the month-by-month sort of minutiae and the details and the activities. What they're interested in is in a cadence at a point, usually every 2 months or every quarter, coming in and going, here's what we said we'd do, here's where we are right now, is there a gap, how are we closing that gap, have we achieved, have we overachieved, what did we do that was successful, can we leverage that to create creative and greater success in the next quarter, and then let's now update our plan for what that next quarter looks like or what that next 2 months looks like, depending on what the cadence is within the account. However, the third role is the most important role. And that third role is called the project manager. And people are like, project manager, project. So don't get caught up in the name. We use that in terms of managing the strategic account as if it's a project, right? So that's why we use the term project manager. Don't think I need to bring someone in for my project team. No. The best project managers are the people who have a attribute of curiosity, and they are the most organized people on the planet. I also dare say that one of the great attributes of the project managers that we've seen be most successful is they're slightly feared by those on the strategic account team. And so they are someone that is there to keep the train running on time, right? And when you turn up, do not turn up to a strategic account team meeting and not done what you said you were going to do. And they are the ones that usually chair the SAM team meetings. And they are the ones that will be accountable for keeping the project plan up to date, keeping people reminded, et cetera, as we go. So it's not admin, right? It is accountability, right? To the plan is their critical role. You have a uncommitted or underperforming project manager on your strategic account team. Your strategic account team will not realize the outcome that it wants. Like, we have literally tracked through thousands of transformations, small and large in this space. That, from my practitioner perspective, is the most critical thing. Now, some of the best project managers that we've had, executive assistants that want to be more deep in understanding what we do, how we do it, and the mechanics of what their organization does, and they can take on a couple of project manager roles for a couple of strategic account teams. We've seen graduates, super smart graduates, come in with just the thirst to learn and do it. One of the best ways is to get to take the project manager role in a SAM team, because you learn so much so quickly. The challenge is you've got to be able to hold senior people to account often, right? Mm-hmm. So you do need a particular personality type and that is able to drive accountability. Now, that's the core 3. The other 3 are the optional roles, right? And so your first optional role is a collaborator. That's a very simple one, particularly in your large organizations. I'm sure there's some very large selling organizations with large strategic account teams and lots of account managers listening. The collaborator role is in your organization, right? Who knows everyone? Who's that person or those people that you can go to that instead of asking around and trying to do it all yourself, you go to that person and say, I've got this particular need with our strategic account for this, this, and this. Who should I go and speak to that's got the expertise, the experience, the knowledge inside the business? That's your collaborator, right? Internal role you go to fast tracks your access to people and expertise in there. Why? Because the next two roles are critically important. The next one is your technical experts. Your technical experts, you can have loads of them that come, and I say you wheel these people in, you wheel them out, right? You only bring them into the account team as and when you need them, and you want to do that sparingly, and you only want to do that and brief them on the specific need. They come in, they share their technical expertise, they roll out, right? And so a technical expert might be involved with 20 account teams at once, providing snippets of expertise on all different stuff. They might have one at a time, right? Depends on the ask. The next is the innovator. You will find that as the strategic account team, stays together, group think starts to take hold very quickly, right? And so when you think in terms of value and value creation, often you'll find it's not the same ideas that create new value, right? And so when you have a really good, line of innovators, and by the way, your innovators don't always have to be from your own organization. There may be plenty of willing people you can wheel in from outside as well. But the outcome we're looking for there is breakthrough thinking, right? Innovation, breakthrough thinking to help this strategic account realize, solve the problems, realize the objectives that they have, that we're partnered with them. And obviously for this team to realize its multiplied return to the organization in terms of what it does. So 6 roles, 3 core, and then, you as I said, your innovators, technical experts, and collaborators are your optional ones. For that.
So that's the typical construct of a strategic accounts team. I've got a couple questions on this. So some of these sound like they're dedicated, meaning, if I own the, whatever great big fancy logo account, then I'm there. I'm the project manager or the relationship lead, as you call it. Some of the other ones are coming in and out based on situations that might require additional expertise or help. I didn't hear anything here, and we're curious about your input on like an executive sponsor. Is that assumed that all these have an internal executive sponsor who's championing the great big strategic accounts, or is that person might be the results driver?
Great question. So your results driver can be an executive. So in some organizations, the results driver has been a segment CEO. In others, it's been a sales manager. Okay. Or the, SVP of accounts or client, or, so it really varies depending on the organization, because what we find is that there needs to be, other than commission, right, that the team members or some of the team members may get from realizing the growth outcomes of the strategic account, there needs to be positive consequence, right, is what we define it as, positive consequence for the account team more than just the individuals on it. And so what we tend to find in terms of executive buy-in and executive engagement is we use a concept called, we call it a VC test. It's like, if you were going to go and present your strategic account plan to a panel of venture capitalists, would they invest in the growth of that strategic account and give you time, effort, and money and award you with that because you made such a compelling case of ROI based on your plan, right? So it depends on that, because if you've got VC testing now, we've got VC testing in place right now across, I think when I looked at it yesterday, it was about 42 of our client that are running strategic account management transformations at the moment, or account management transformation, because some of them are SAM and CAM, right? So just keep that in mind. And the cadence is either quarterly, and they select, like if there's 100 strategic accounts, they'll select 5 of those, and there may be some criteria that's attached to that, to come and present to a panel of executives every quarter. Some, we've got one organisation that take, I think the last one is about a day and a half, nearly 2 days of their executive mid-year, and 2 days of that is dedicated to either on Zoom Teams, having each of the account managers, and then they give them a window. It's like someone's 10, 15 minutes, they break it up, and they get through as many of the most important strategic accounts as possible. And they have to present an update to their plan, current progress, what's going to happen in a way that, and then invite input from the executive. And what we found is that also had a transformative effect internally, because those accounts were getting the meaningful focus that they needed right from the top. So that's another hack I would give you is the higher you can get bought into strategic account management, strategic account growth, the more there's a direct correlation to success, because there's positive consequence and obviously cascading accountability in that ecosystem.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to offer a couple of reflections here. First is what you're talking about is having a really good process for an internal account review, right? So there's obviously multiple levels that go into that, and you have meetings to prep for the big meeting in front of the executive committee and all this sort of stuff. But the fact that there's a cadence to doing an account review is going to be incredibly important, because it helps you maintain really good hygiene when it comes to understanding where are we going, what's in the way, helps you to remove roadblocks and stuff like that. The other thing I want to mention that's really important is, critical part of the SAM or CAM is to be the internal evangelist for the customer, but to feed back information from the customer to the rest of the company, right? To say, here's what we've heard from the client. Here's where they're going. Here's where they're getting hung up. Here's where there's friction points. Here's where there's opportunities, and make sure that information gets to the relevant leaders in product or service or marketing or what have you. And those kind of meetings can be incredibly impactful for making sure that information isn't just staying in the CAM or the SAM's head or within that team, but it's then being broadcast within the rest of the company.
Spot on. I love that term, by the way. I was just writing down internal evangelist. That's a great
internal
term.
Evangelist. Yeah, that's how I think about it. Now, Andy, you mentioned something there a couple times. You mentioned probably the account manager's least favorite thing in the world to do, which is the account plan. So tell us how you think about the account plan. What should go into the account plan? What is who's working on it? What's the output like? How often am I reviewing it? Because in my experience, it's one of the least favorite things for any account manager to do.
Yeah, there was a 32% gap, by the way, between top performers building effective account plans versus the rest, right? So, and I say effective plans. So, for those of you listening that are worried about this, I am a big advocate on behalf of account managers globally in terms of how do we make things more simple for them? How do we make simple convert to effective? And then how do we make sure that when we invest our time to plan that we win more, right? So that's my, I guess, my counsel to my team always in terms of what we're doing is this is the value we bring. We don't bring value by just taking something off the shelf and trying to make it.
An account plan is not an academic exercise. We're not just doing it to do it, right?
So there's a couple of things here, and maybe a few new things that I'll put out there, but I'll just be a little careful because they're not fully out in market yet. So the hardest part of building a strategic account plan is doing it the first time, right? Now, here's the hack. Top performers see account planning as a dynamic. The rest see it as a linear annual event. Okay, that's a big difference, right? So if you think about the strategic account teams, and this is why for some of you that what I've just shared with you in terms of roles may be the breakthrough moment for you, because it's not just on you as the relationship lead. There'll be a lot of relationship leads on this podcast, right? That's I think what's going to happen, and that relationship lead, this would resonate with them a lot, right? Look at your roles first of all, right? You build the plan as a team. So you form your team first before you build your plan. So that's the first thing. It's not a single person event like key account management often is. Strategic account management planning is a team sport. So don't do it alone is the big one. The hardest part is doing it the first time. Then it's up to the team, particularly the project manager, and that's why having a good one is really important, to keep it updated as we evolve, right? As whatever our cadence is it weekly? Some strategic account teams that are dedicated, it's weekly. Sometimes it's daily. They have daily stand-ups. We have, project managers who update strategic account plans daily in terms of that. But usually it's weekly or monthly. And the project manager's role is to keep the plan up to date based on what the team decide, the actions they commit to. It's the team's role to go and execute. It's the other team's role to go and execute the actions that were agreed to, right? So keep that in mind. The team is a critical part of both the planning and the execution of the plan. It's not an individual sport, it's a team sport. So get your team right is a big one for planning. The second thing is it's a dynamic. Top performers are constantly updating their plans. Top performers are constantly going into their strategic accounts and getting their finger on the pulse in terms of needs discovery. That needs discovery example I gave you at the beginning was just to select strategic account teams, right? Just to select the strategic accounts.
Yeah, the accounts, yeah.
The ongoing is that we're constantly keeping our plan up to date based on what we're learning by the stakeholders we're engaging, the conversations we're having, the work. When you're executing your, product or service delivery inside your strategic account, some of the greatest sources of intelligence that are going to keep your finger on the pulse and your team heading in the right direction to achieve your multiple of growth are the people going and executing the work inside the account, the delivery of the product and service delivery team, the engineers, the technical, the technical people, the project leads, and so getting access to them and getting their intel is also a critical part of a successfully functioning plan, a successfully functioning team executing a really up-to-date, finger on the pulse plan. So everything connects there. I'm just going to pause because there might be some questions there.
I mean, look, what I'm hearing is the power here is in dynamism. It's just getting started. It's building as you go. Everyone sees the account plan as like this thing I've got to chisel into a stone tablet, and that's not the point at all. The point is you want to be agile about this. You want to get started. It evolves. It grows with you. Things change. You change the plan. People move in or out. You're updating your org charts and your relationship maps and all that sort of stuff. But you're constantly looking at it. You use the account plan as your North Star. I don't believe it's something that people should be afraid of. I believe it's a very important tool for the growth of their account and therefore the growth of their success and of their careers, right, in doing this. And I think one of the things that people overlook is they think I just do this once and I put it on a shelf and that's it. No, you want to make it actionable, things that I can immediately then go do. And did we perform the tasks or did we hit the milestones and the objectives and stuff like that? We want to get to that level where there's like heat in the engine. You know what I mean? Like that to me, that's a sign of a good account plan.
Yeah. And I think, and this is the part I was going to say, with the advent of AI, particularly when we're talking about industry, so the strategic account, what industry it's in, so what are the headwinds, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and then being able to take what we're seeing now as we're working on quite a few projects with our clients where we have a vast pool of internal data. And using large language models and various AI technologies, we are harnessing the power of that data to give us even more robust and more specific intelligence in terms of, well, what are some insights that we can be leading with? What are some opportunities that this is now uncovering and showing for us in terms of supporting the growth multiples inside the strategic account? So I think, you've got to look at, yes, time is not, but I always say time is never the problem. Why is the problem? What is the why, right? Because if your why is big enough that you'll find the time to make it happen. If you're not going to invest the time and you're worried about time, you're looking at the wrong thing. So the leveraging and being smart about how you leverage technology and accessing data to also support you, as well as having a really good strategic account team is critically important. The other thing I want to note to your listeners is this. We are talking about strategic accounts. we are not talking about key accounts, right? And I'm very happy to come back on and we'll talk about key accounts in another one. We're talking about strategic accounts here and how we apply what we do to get those multiples in that context. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about the whales. We're talking about the absolutely gigantic accounts. So when I look at an account plan, the things that I expect to see, and I want to see what else you would add or remove from this list. When I look at an account plan, here's the things that I want to see. I want to see just general information. Who's the account? What have they bought from us? What's the industry like? Just like sort of general data, which is usually in the CRM or something like that. But I want a snapshot of the customer. I then want to see who are the critical relationships. So champion, decision maker, executive sponsor, influencers, contributors, all that sort of stuff. And what do we know about these people? Who's an advocate? Who doesn't like us? All that sort of jazz. And I also want to know, when's the last time we touched this person? When's the last time we had a major conversation or interaction with them? I then want to look at things like, what's my strategy? So maybe I've got a SWOT analysis in there. Maybe I've got a voice of customer history of like when we did deep dives with them on stuff. Maybe I want to see my last couple of quarterly business reviews and how the customer responded to them and are we moving in the right direction? And then I want to see the customer's goals and objectives and how are we lined up behind those goals and objectives and helping them to get there. At a very minimum, that's what I want to see. Hopefully I'm then seeing more stuff that's, bringing it to life. So activities and notes and completions and tasks and progress and stuff like that. But, Andy, what am I missing here? What else goes into one of these strategic account plans?
Yeah. So account goals and all of the current update in terms of where we're at, what we're doing. And, we call that the dashboard, just having the snapshot dashboard sort of headline view in terms of what are we looking to achieve? Why are we looking to achieve it? And how are we positioned in terms of that? So, that's really good. Research is a big one. So looking at the current state of the account, what their spend is, what their what their potential spend is, who they're spending with in terms of competitors, and what that current position is linked to. Well, here's what's happening externally in their industry as to what validates that direction and that possibility. Here, aligning to what we're seeing happen externally, we align that to what's happening internally. So, what's the internal research? Having those two front and center in terms of that on your plan is critically important. Keeping that updated, and then having that aligned to the value that we can bring. So having some sort of qualitative, quantitative sort of view in terms of what's the value that we as an organization, as a strategic account team, et cetera, can bring to that all based on what we're learning from what our research is showing us. And then I think the people, obviously stakeholder mapping, and you might have different buying centers with inside a strategic account. And that's why I said you might have multiple relationship leads and what's happening in each of those. But we, as in terms of stakeholder mapping, go to the individual level. We're not looking at a buying center's need as a total. We're looking at the collective needs of the individual stakeholders within a buying center, rolling up to that buying center's summarized needs. So it's quite different to a lot because I think I see a lot of when we go in, often we see a lot of strategic account teams, selling orgs, really kind of generalized need.
You got to be specific.
And the individuals is where the magic is. But knowing how to master that and do that quickly is critically important. Then stakeholder mapping. So stakeholder mapping is an interesting one because most people think, well, stakeholder mapping is an org chart. I disagree with that because when you map out all of the key stakeholders and you've got some meaningful criteria, we look at decision roles, the influence in terms of the buying criteria, who's defining the buying criteria, who's evaluating the buying criteria, what's our current relationship strength with each of those different roles. So really do proper analysis. And as I said, the hardest part is just doing this up front, but you do it as a team. Very quickly, you divide these sorts of activities amongst the right people. You'll get the intel back and have an incredibly well-informed plan to help you move forward. So stakeholder mapping leads to relationship mapping. And so stakeholder mapping is about understanding who plays what role, who has what influence in terms of the buying criteria and the decision making. Then it's, well, what are the relationships, and how does everyone connect inside the organization? Chris brought Julie in, and so Chris and Julie have worked together for 20 years at their previous organization. Whilst they're senior people, they've only been here 3 months. So knowing things like that, and then the technical evaluator has an incredibly influential part, yet this person's never spoken to by anyone. And they were shocked when we reached out and we wanted to speak to them in terms of, understanding their role and their needs, because it was the first time in 11 years of being inside the organization that any external vendor had engaged them. And so that immediately had a transformative effect in terms of relationship, et cetera, et cetera. So stakeholder mapping leads to relationship mapping. And so those are critical elements in terms of these opportunities. So what are the opportunities? And, I want to be able to have a very clear snapshot of what are we chasing or what's evolving. Competitive positioning. So top performers in strategic account management are competitor aware. They are never competitor focused, right? And that is another hack for you, right? It's not clear in the research. From a practitioner's perspective, we see that time and time again. Stop focusing on your competitors. Focus on your client, right? The minute you focus on your competitors, you're taking your eye off the prize. So we go competitive positioning. How do we become competitor aware? And then in the plan is your action plan, right? That's I think the people miss is the two are often separated. Like it's like a to-do list separate to no. The to-do list, the action plan, is in the plan itself, and that's everything together in one thing. And the last thing I'd say is, don't shy away from making an investment in integrating it within CRM. We are now seeing a significant difference between the teams that operate out of in most cases, a customized version of account planning with inside their CRM versus those who don't. Now, the great thing about us is we don't actually have a tech play in this. We are completely tech agnostic. So when I'm saying that with no horse in the race, right? But I'm saying that because we advise on that, and there's way better people out in the world that do CRM really well. And we work with them often now, and it has, once again, a transformative effect in leveraging technology to drive efficiency so that we spend more of our time executing the strategic account plan than we do trying to plan it and keep version control and all that wonderful stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm very, very familiar with the technology space here, and I completely agree. If you're still doing this on pen and paper or PowerPoint, then hey, wake up to the 21st century, everybody. As we wrap up here, Andy, I just want to emphasize one thing when we're talking about account planning. To me, this is where this concept of customer centricity comes to life. Right? Everybody claims to be customer centric. Every website says that they're customer centric or whatever. But when you're building an account plan and you're really seriously looking at understanding your customer, who are they? What are their needs? What are their goals? Where are they going? How can you help them get there? That's living customer centricity. And so I'm always very impressed with companies that adopt account planning in this way to live and breathe this the concept of customer centricity.
It's interesting. Anyone's first day at Rain Group, when I get the opportunity to meet them, I say to them, there's only one boss in this business, and that's the client, right? And we are here to serve them, and never, ever forget that, right? Because the minute we forget that and the minute we focus on ourselves, we lose, right? Big time.
Big time.
Is through the client and their outcomes, and we are here to engineer their outcomes, and that's what defines client results. So couldn't agree with you more, Alex, right? And I just want to say, hey, there's going to be a lot of chatter in the brains of a lot of our account managers listening right now, and they're going to say, Andy, you don't understand our organization, you don't get this, you don't get that. Hey, the bigger the org, the more complex it is, right? The more demands that they put on really important people like you who help generate future growth and sustain current revenues for the business. It's critical. But the asks are growing internally, and the asks then become distracting, right? Totally noted. It's happening in your org. It's happening in everyone else's org, right? And we see that because we get to go into many. We have the privilege of going into many. But that is not an excuse to lose your sight in terms of what matters most, right? It's something that happens. We need to deal with it. We all need to deal with it. And there are ways of dealing with it. We're not here to talk about that today. But I wanted to acknowledge that fact, because that is often, Alex, the thing that we find immediately distracts really great, potentially top performing strategic account managers from keeping their eye on the prize, which is their client's outcome in that strategic account. So it is a factor. It is an issue. And for those leaders that are listening to this, it is something you will need to address, because it is impeding your growth, particularly when it comes to your strategic accounts. Why? Because the team and their mindset and their focus can only happen in the context that we've spoken about here, when they are somewhat freed up from the being drowning under internal requests, versus spending their time executing really great strategic account plans.
I think you're gonna get a lot of amens to that, Andy, for sure. Well, look, if I just want to close here with a note to the listeners. If you do what Andy just talked about here, and you start to segment and select your accounts based on the appropriate criteria, if you then develop your account teams with those 6 roles that he talked about, and if you bring dynamism into your account plans, you will be well on your way to unlocking what he calls the ridiculous upside within existing accounts. You can do this. There's a process here. That's why I'm so glad that we've got people like Andy Springer from Rain Group coming on the podcast to share these ideas. This is all within your reach. So, hey, Andy, thank you so much. It was great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Alex. Hope your listeners got paid.